The following program is a production of Truth for the World.
Ye servants of God, your Master proclaim, and publish abroad His wonderful name, the name all victorious of Jesus extol. His kingdom is glorious, He rules over all.
If persecution and death for the cause of Christ should come, then I should be ready to accept it. But I do not need to go seek it out. Jesus didn't seek it out. You know, Jesus could have died long before the cross. There were plenty of people. They were lining up, taking numbers, ready to kill Jesus. All he had to do was say, I'm ready, kill me, and that would have been it. But why didn't he do it? Why should he do it? That's my question. Why should he? Well, shouldn't he do it and trust in God? I think that's testing God, not trusting. If Paul had sought out death, do you think he could have gotten it before he was killed in Rome? Oh, yeah. Just read Acts chapter 20. They were ready to kill him. They had people taking a vow, I will not eat until Paul is dead. Why didn't he let himself get killed? My question is, why should he? Why should he? There's no commandment of God involved to say, Paul, you need to go let them kill you. If he has no command in obedience to God, why should he? I know one day I'm going to die, but I've decided I'm going to try and make it the last thing I do. And by that I mean I'm going to make it the last thing I do, not the first thing I do. Fifth, trusting in God is not giving up all your decision-making responsibility. That's testing God. Trusting God is not giving up all your decision-making responsibility. That's testing God. Trusting in God and avoiding testing Him means putting your confidence in who He is and what He said, but it doesn't mean that you give up your abilities to make rational decisions and give up your responsibility to do anything. If you still have the ability to make decisions about what is best, then God expects you to do that. Notice Proverbs 3 again. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lead not into thine own understanding. But keep reading. Keep reading. In all thy ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct thy paths. Be not wise in thine own eyes. Fear the Lord. Depart from evil. That sounds like there's things I'm supposed to be doing. I need to be walking certain paths. I need to depart from evil. I need to be using my own judgment to make the decisions. Notice you're to trust in God, but acknowledge Him. Walk in paths. Fear the Lord. Depart from evil. In other words, it's not all on God's shoulders. It's also on mine. I need to be doing what I need to do. And trusting in God doesn't mean I alleviate all my decision-making responsibilities and just say, well, God, do whatever you want. No, God expects you to do part of what you need to do. You cannot say, I don't have to worry whether or not this is a good decision. I'll just trust in God. That's not trusting God. That's testing God. You can't say, I don't have to worry whether or not this is safe. I'll just trust in God. That's not trusting God. That's testing God. It is testing Him to see if He will take care of you and if He'll do whatever needs to be done. If I go home and lie on the bed and don't do anything and just say, well, I'm trusting in God to give me income and food and shelter and take care of me, I'm just going to trust in God. That's not trusting in God. That's testing Him to see if He'll take care of you. What if I say, I'm not going to let fear stop me, I'm going to put myself in unnecessary danger and I'm going to trust in God? If that's what we're supposed to do, then why didn't Jesus jump off the temple? Instead, Jesus trusted God's word enough to believe you do not test God. Trusting in God is not giving up your rational thinking and flinging yourself off the top of the temple. Sixth, ask yourself these three questions. Am I trusting God? In order to trust in God, I need to be trusting in who He is or what He has said. If you answer yes, that's a good thing. Are you trusting God? But by that, I mean trusting in who He is and what His Word says, including the words, do not test God. Am I testing God? In order to be testing God, I need to be putting him to the test to carry out something he said he would do, or putting him to the test as to who he is. If you say, am I testing God? And the answer is no, that's a good thing. You don't want to test God. Am I being tempted? Are you being enticed to do evil? If the answer is yes, go see number 1. It's not always easy to figure out, is it? Let's practice. Here's a question or a scenario. There are some places in the world where openly preaching God and carrying a Bible may lead to death. Jesus said, go teach all nations. Are we all in violation then of that, of God's command, by not getting on the plane with a load of Bibles and going directly into those places and standing on the marketplace and saying, believe in Jesus or you'll die? What are we supposed to do? God said, teach all nations, but I know if I go to those nations, they're going to kill me as soon as I raise up my Bible. Well, we are to attempt to teach those people, but openly inviting persecution and death would probably not be very beneficial to teaching those people. It might be considered testing God to take care of us by unnecessarily putting ourselves in danger. Instead, what we might do is use expediency to figure out the best way to teach and use alternative means like radio, internet, mail, one-on-one discussions. Avoiding unnecessary danger is not distrusting God. Otherwise, Jesus distrusted God when he didn't allow himself to be cast down a hill and killed. Practice number 2. Look at Acts chapter 9, verses 23 through 25. After that, many days were fulfilled. The Jews took counsel to kill him regarding Paul. But their laying await was known of Saul, who was called Saul at the time, and they watched the gates day and night to kill him. Then the disciples took him by night and let him down by the wall in a basket. If Saul had openly walked to the gates of the city to leave, would that have been trusting God or testing God? Was Saul trusting in God when he escaped the city secretly? Was there a command involved? It's not always easy to figure out what to do, is it? I believe Saul was trusting in God by attempting to live and to teach the gospel. Putting himself in mortal danger by the enemies of God would not have been obedient to any command of God. Where does God say, go put yourself in unnecessary danger and let them kill you? Nor would it have been beneficial to the cause of Christ. So why do it? Later in his life, when the government forced Paul to lose his life, then he accepted it. Because the decision was out of his hands. It's out of my hands now, and therefore I'm just going to accept it. 2 Timothy 4, I'm ready to be offered. The time of my departure is at hand. I've fought a good fight. I've finished my course. I've kept the faith. Notice he doesn't say, I sat back and did nothing because I trusted in God. He said, I fought. I finished. I kept the faith. And as the Bible tells us, where's faith without works? What about when rules seem to conflict? Another thing that makes figuring out how to act is difficult when it seems the desires of God are in conflict with one another. Once my family was coming home on a Sunday afternoon after being out of town. We saw a couple on the side of the road having car trouble. There was not enough time to stop and offer help and still make it back for Sunday evening worship services. What should we have done? On one hand, we don't want to miss the assembling together of the saints. The Bible gives us an approved example to follow. But on the other hand, faith without works is dead. Will it really matter if I go to worship service and try to show God I'm faithful if I won't stop and help somebody when they need it? What do I do? It seems like the rules of God are in conflict with each other. What do I do? I'd like to suggest something that I learned when I taught media law. In media law, there are times when parts of the Constitution seem to conflict with one another. For example, the First Amendment gives the right to freely speak out and peaceably assemble against the government. However, if two opposing groups assemble to address the government at the same time, the outcome may not be peaceable. right? If you got two really protesting groups that are in opposition to each other and you let them assemble at the same time, it may not be peaceable anymore. So what do? The First Amendment says we have the right to be peaceable, but at the same time we don't want to riot and don't want people stepping on other people's rights and their safety. Well, the answers include trying alternatives and placing limited restrictions. Some restrictions are called time, place, or manner restrictions. It doesn't mean that the freedom is revoked. It simply means the freedom must be exercised under certain restrictions in order to protect the freedoms and safety of others. Another example is the First Amendment right to freedom of press. But the Sixth Amendment gives somebody the right to a fair trial. So what do you do in a city when the press has given so much publicity to your arrest and charge of a criminal activity that you can't find a jury that's impartial? Now the First Amendment is infringing on my Sixth Amendment. What do? You try alternatives. You move the jury trial out to another county. Or you put a limitation on the press. Or you sequester the jury away from the press. You do something in order to preserve both freedoms. And that may include putting limited temporary restrictions on one or both parties. In the case of the freedom of speech and the peaceable assembly, it may mean that you give a permit to Group A to protest from 9 to 11, and you give a permit to Group B to protest from 1 to 3. And that way you both preserve the rights of both, but you keep them separated. Right? You can't protest unless it's between 9 and 11. Now that's a limited restriction on your freedom. It allows you to operate and use your freedom, but it also preserves the freedom of others. Now what about in the case of a pandemic? I believe the same thing has happened with the recent pandemic. The government is not legally allowed to prevent us from worship, but they can temporarily restrict certain of our freedoms in order that we don't trample on the rights or the needs of others. In the interest of public health and safety, the government temporarily restricted the worship to small groups. Our restriction in this state now allows for larger groups, provided we're all wearing a mask, except the exception of someone giving a religious speech who is distanced from everybody else. Does God want us to assemble together on the first day of the week to worship Him? Yes. Does God want us to show love and care and concern to our fellow brethren, as well as people outside the church? Yes. So what do? What do we do when there's a pandemic and we're told to stop assembling in large groups for a limited time? Do we follow the Word of God and assemble, or do we not assemble for fear of catching or spreading a deadly disease and potentially causing death to ourselves and others? Which one is trusting God and which one is testing God? Or are there alternatives that allow for both? It's not always easy to figure this stuff out, is it? Well, let's go through our things to remember. Trusting God is good, testing God is bad. So we'll keep that in mind. Do we have authority? Yes, assembling together is authorized, but so is loving others and putting them first. So for sake of argument, let's call that a draw. We have authority for both. Well, what about the third? Remember the rule of expediency. Are there other ways to carry out the worship and assembling other than the normal way? And the answer is yes. We can worship in small groups or even remotely. What about number 4? Are we accepting persecutions or hardships, or are we seeking it out? Well, if we restrict our assembling, we're accepting a hardship. We would prefer to be together, but we don't. If we get together and potentially catch or spread a deadly disease, we might be seeking out hardship and even testing God, potentially. Trusting in God without accepting responsibility is really testing God. If we just say that we should assemble, potentially catch or spread a deadly disease, and possibly end up causing our own and others' deaths, I don't think we're trusting God. I think we're testing God by putting ourselves in danger and expecting Him to just control everything and bail us out of trouble. Also, ask the three questions. I think I'm trusting God to continue to be obedient in that I'm worshiping. I think I'm avoiding testing God by not putting myself and others at necessary risk. And I'm not being tempted to disobey God. I'm merely changing how I obey in order to protect myself and others. And number 7, I know this wasn't on your list before, but I added it here. Practice love. In fact, I think it should be added, and it should be the final determining factor. And if you can't make up your mind on what the right thing is to do from 1 through 6, or even if you can, make sure and ask yourself, am I practicing love? Love, the agape love of the Bible, by definition, is putting others first, even if you don't get what you want. Matthew 26:39, Jesus gave us that example. I don't want to go to the cross, but I'm going to do it because other people will benefit. And I'm putting other people before myself. That's agape love. Now, Jesus is our great example of love. He didn't want to go, but he did what was best for other people. Why should we think about love in determining what to do? Because that's what Jesus did when he had to choose between accepting persecution and death or avoiding it. In this particular case, he was obedient to God and accepted it, and he did it to show love to other people. So does that mean I just get on a plane with a Bible and go to a foreign land that outlaws Christianity and start preaching so that I can be killed too? After all, I have to put my life second and others first. No, because notice what Jesus said. If it be possible, let this cup pass from me. What is he asking for? Jesus is asking for an alternative solution. Is he not? Jesus is not just saying, I'm going to go through persecution and death and just forget about everything. He says, I want an alternative if it's available. I don't want to go through this if I don't have to. Now, there was no alternative, so Jesus accepted it. But if there had been an alternative, what would Jesus have done? He would do it. Because isn't that what he's asking for? If it's possible, I don't want to do this. Is it possible for me to avoid death and jumping on a plane and going to this foreign land and avoid death? Yes, it's possible. I can still obey the command and avoid that. Therefore, I'm going to do it. Why should we think about love when determining what to do? Because Paul wrote this. Now abideth faith, hope, and love, these three, and the greatest of these is love. Which one should be done? Stopping to help the couple at the side of the road, or passing them up to go to Sunday evening worship service? Which one shows the agape love of Jesus by putting what I want second and others first? See, now I think it starts to become a little clearer, isn't it? I think we should stop and help. What does the Bible say when somebody's hungry? Just say to them, be ye warmed and filled. I've got to go to worship service. Is that love? Is that faith? Is that showing God your faith? Not at all. Now which one should be done? Temporarily halting the assembling of large groups together in order to avoid spreading a deadly virus? Or ignoring the temporary limitation of the government and the danger in order to assemble together in large groups? Which one shows the agape love of Jesus by putting what I want second and others lead first? I think the answer is stopping to help the people and temporarily meeting in small groups and online. Why? Because it's sacrificing something for me, worshiping with the saints, and it's giving to someone else's needs, and I think that's what Jesus would have done. If you want to disagree with me, you can disagree with me, but that's what I think. Once again, you can't just turn to book, chapter, and verse on some of these things. I'm giving you what I think I've concluded by studying this. Also, I'm still able to worship and assemble. I'm still doing that. I just have to do it in a smaller group. Well, what about not assembling together? Won't that affect my faith? What about not worshiping God? Won't that affect my hope? Now abides faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. If love is the greatest, I think that's the trump card you have to play. When the rules seem to be in conflict, what trump card trumps all of them? Love does. Agape love. Whichever option shows agape love, I believe that trumps all the other rules. If for no other reason, because that's what Jesus did. Now, because some of the questions we've raised deals with the assembly, and because there may be some confusion about it, I want to briefly deal with this verse from Hebrews very quickly. Hebrews 10:25, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together. First, what's the purpose of assembling? Can I worship God on my own? Or if I were the only person in the local congregation? Well, yes, I can worship God on my own. And if I'm the only person in the local congregation, I may have to worship on my own. However, if you're not the only person, you should try to assemble together. Why? The answer is for the benefit of others. You see that? Exhorting one another as you see the day approaching. Yes, I get something out of it too, but notice the context. Notice the previous verses. What's the purpose of assembling? For others. Consider one another to provoke unto love and good works. That's the previous verse. What's he talking about? You get together so that you can edify each other, provoke each other, exhort one another. That's the purpose. Do you see love being practiced there? Consider one another, provoke others to love and good works, exhorting one another. God knew that we could worship alone, but he also knew there was a benefit in meeting together. Notice the context says the benefit's for the other person. You ever hear somebody say, well, God won't mind if you miss just one worship service. What about your obligation to your fellow brothers and sisters? Second, the condemnation is connected with the word forsaking of the assembling together. We need to define that. One dictionary gives the definition of the Greek word: to separate connection with someone, or forsake, or abandon, or desert. To separate a connection with. It goes on to say to cease assembling, or to carry on something in a negligent manner. I like to also say leave behind on purpose. When someone says, I'm sick and unable to come to worship, have they forsaken the assembly? No. Why? Because they didn't leave it behind on purpose. They didn't abandon it. If my parents stopped the car to help people on the side of the road, have they forsaken the assembly? No. They've not separated their connection with the church. They've never said they're never going again. Neither have they purposefully put a couple on the side of the road so that they could avoid going to worship. They didn't go to assembly, but it was not their idea, and it wasn't their purpose to miss it. To cease assembling, to carry on something in a negligent manner. Now, I've heard this, maybe you've heard it too. Some would say, well, it says cease assembling, or the verse says just as the manner or habit of some is. Therefore, as long as I come now and then, it's okay, provided I don't make a habit of it. Well, keep reading the definition. It also says to do something in a negligent manner. That means you're still doing it, you're just not doing it in the way you're supposed to be doing it. The idea here isn't that well, as long as I don't have to come all the time, I just don't need to make a habit of missing. It says don't do something in a negligent manner. Negligence means failing to take the proper care you should have taken. Therefore, doing something in a negligent manner means you're still doing it. You're just not doing it in the way you should be doing it. If I feel very sick with the flu in the winter and stay home instead of coming to worship, is that the right thing to do? I think so. I've not left behind the worship on purpose. I didn't try and get sick, it just happened. I've not severed my connection with the church, and I'm also not testing God by saying, well, I'm just going to go out in the cold and trust God that I won't die or pass out while driving. That's not trusting God, that's testing God. I'm also practicing love by keeping away from others who may be likely to get sick or who may even have immunity problems and potentially die from something like the flu. When the elders of this congregation decided to comply with the laws of the land and stop assembling together in large numbers like we usually do because of the pandemic, was that right or wrong? I think it was right. We did not leave the public assembly behind on purpose. Instead, we practiced expediency and continued worshiping online or in small groups. We accepted the hardship of not assembling, but we did not seek out the hardship of a deadly disease and put ourselves in unnecessary danger. We did not just let whatever happens happen, but we accepted responsibility for making decisions. And in answer to 3 questions, we were trusting God by continuing to be obedient in that we were worshiping. We avoided testing God by not putting ourselves at unnecessary risk. And we are not being tempted to disobey God. We're changing how we obey in order to protect myself and others. We're not losing our freedom of worship and assembling. We're merely having a temporary manner restriction placed on our freedom. The government does it all the time. It doesn't revoke your freedom, it just puts a temporary restriction on it. You ever go vote and they say you can't campaign near the door, you got to stay over here. What about my freedom of speech? You can still have your freedom of speech, just don't go do it near the polling place. You see, that's a restriction. You still have freedom of speech, you just have to do it over here. And last, but actually first, we're practicing love. When we stop meeting together, we practice love because we're sacrificing what we might prefer for the good of others. And think about it, not only in the church, but outside the church. Are we showing care and concern for not only ourselves, but for others outside the church? I think we are. Conclusion. As you can probably see, it's not always easy to figure out exactly what to do and still be pleasing to God. It's not. Therefore, don't be surprised if yourself or others have difficulty knowing what to do right away, or even if they make a mistake. You can't open the Bible and find a specific answer to every single problem you're going to find. That's why you have to use God's Word and your best judgment. Remember, as we all go through this or any persecution or hardship, love is the greatest. And that's what we need to show to each other.
If you would like a free Bible correspondence course, then write us at Truth for the World, P.O. Box 241, Bethel Springs, Tennessee, 38315, the United States of America. Or visit us online at truthfortheworld.org.
Paul said, "I have planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase." Truth for the World is committed to sowing the seed as much as we can. Our Bible teaching goes on day and night and reaches into countries around the world. Students take correspondence courses, listen to our radio programs, watch our videos, and register at our Bible college. We're blessed to be able to be doing so much, but we can't do it alone. If you're a member of the Church of Christ, can you help us? Any prayers and financial support are welcomed. Join us. If we do our part, God will surely do His.